My name's Russell Spatz. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a member of the South Dixie group from Miami, Florida, and I haven't found necessary to have a drink, nor have I had a drink since January 25th, 1981, so I'm in my 44th year of sobriety. And I feel a little bit like a thief getting an applause for that because that has really nothing to do with me. Left to my own devices, I'd be drunk. And I'm just a beggar trying to show another beggar where to get across the bread. That's it for me. So I want to first of all, I want to first of all thank some of the people involved here. Number one, the people that I know that I met, Kat and Mike. You've been glorious and wonderful. The group is fantastic. I have another group of people that came in through Zoom, and I want to thank my friends that came in through Zoom, and they keep on. I've got Stephanie's here. I have some friends that know me from Zoom meetings. You know, Joshua and Stephanie, and I see she brought Linda too, who had a birthday. But I want to thank Stephanie for showing me all the texts that are coming in, and Cindy sent me a text. Thank you, Cindy, that I should do my talk in humility, but you know I never do it with a group this small, so you know that's not going to happen. I got about 10 people saying that get on with it. It's 11:30. They're in New York. I'm tired. Me too. I'm from Miami, same time zone, but this group gives me the enthusiasm to sort of tell a little bit about my story. I have a short period of time, so I'm going to be 75 this month. I'm in my 44th year of sobriety. I've got, I didn't come today with any stories. My story was something like, you don't understand. It's not my fault. I can understand why you think I have a drinking problem, knowing the little you know, but I don't have a drinking problem. I drink because I have problems, and one day my problems will go away, and I won't have to drink anymore. So thank you for your advice, but why don't you go screw yourself? And that was sort of like my deal. I'm an if-onlyer, a yes-butter. I wake up every morning saying, if I only had that gal, if I only had my own girlfriend, if I only had more money, if I only had a job, if I only had this, if I only had a car, if I only had whatever, if I only lose weight, I'd be okay. And I never realized till I was 25 years sober that I woke up every morning saying I'm not okay. But of course, that's the real disease. The disease is not about drinking, so I'm not going to talk about drinking. So not that I'm against drunkalogs. I love drunkalogs, but there's more important stuff to talk about because there's a lot of people, you may not know this. I don't know how it happens in California, but I'm here for the guy who has 11 years and sitting in the audience, and in 6 months he's going to be drunk, but he doesn't know it. I'm here for the person with 22 years who's got 22 years and he's feeling pretty good because he's got 22 years and in 6 months he's going to be drunk, but he doesn't know it. I'm here for the person who's got 3 months and he's feeling pretty good and he's excited about himself, but in another year he's going to be drunk and he doesn't know it. I'm here for the disease of alcoholism. I'm not here for alcohol because alcohol is just a symptom of the problem. It's what gets us in here. It's a hell of a symptom, but I'm going to talk about old-timer stuff, the 6th step, and how it affected me in my life. And the truth is, one reason I'm doing that is because I've lost my memory. Don't get me wrong. If you put a gun to my head, I'll give you a drunkalog. I'm going to say a few drunkalog sort of things, you know what I mean? But, so you know I'm not here just because of the coffee, but I mean, I'm going to say a few things so that you know I'm an alcoholic, but the truth of the matter is, but the 6th step is the step that separates the men from the boys. And I couldn't help but notice that maybe between the ages of, up to 20, you get a bunch of people. And then between 20 and 40, 20 and 55, nobody's around. And there's a reason for that. It's not because they all die. Because I deal with a lot of people that have 10, 20, 30, 50, all that sort of stuff, and they drink before they get there. And I deal with a lot of people, sponsor a lot of people that have more than 15 years, and they're miserable, and they're not happy with their sobriety. And our big book says here and there, once in a while, it says, a man will tell you a former drinker feel better, look better, having a better time. We laugh at such sallies. We know he's going to try the old game again because he's not happy with his sobriety. No, soon to know loneliness as few do. So I'm here to talk about the disease. I'm going to talk about the real problem that centers in your mind, not your body. Because alcoholics are insane. Because we must be insane because they say we come to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. And if you're sane, you don't need to be restored to sanity. Only insane people need to be restored to sanity. So I'm here to talk about the insanity. The insanity you don't even realize you have until you have maybe 40 years and you're not quite sure of that. because it doesn't arise until life starts hitting you over the head. At first, you may get hit over the head with your life because of the consequences of your actions. I love John Wayne's quote, "Life is tough, and when you're stupid, it's even tougher." And I was a guy that I thought was the smartest guy in the room, and I knew everything, and that's what I thought. I thought I knew everything, but that was all I knew. I didn't know how to hold a marriage together. I didn't know how to be a good friend. I didn't know how to have any integrity. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the booze. I want to congratulate all the celebrants. I've got to do that, and I really am proud of you. And everybody from the guy with 1 day or whatever it is to the guy with 55 years. And I think that's just an incredible deal. And I'm going to just sort of breeze through this. I think I got 25 minutes or something like that. So as I said, you walk in here, you don't have a story. What's the story, you know? And alcoholics are very well defended, you know? You don't tell somebody they're an alcoholic, they'll fight you over it. And I know I fought over it, but the way you learn it is you learn by coming to these meetings. You come to these, you got to flank them. You know, you go to a meeting and you're sitting there in the audience and some guy's telling the story and you say, you ever hear a guy tell a story and you say, man, that guy is crazy. And then you think and say, shit, I was doing that last week, you know, and all of a sudden you got a story. And so all of a sudden you got a story. You start remembering, yeah, I was doing that and I was doing that. And then you start remembering I was doing that when I was drinking. I was doing that when I was, you start thinking about what was happening. You start thinking about your own stories. And then as you listen to people in the group, you hear their story, you start thinking about your stories, and then every week that goes by, you got another story. And you come up and you hear people they say, you wouldn't believe what happened to me today. I had a fight with my mother, she said this and she said that and blah, blah, blah. And I went to the thing and you know what I did? I said this and it was like the perfect thing. And my mom said thanks and it was unbelievable. And then they say this word and they say, and that's not me. And it ain't you. And what you want to make sure is that you never show up. Whoever you were, you want to make sure that person never shows up. Because that person will show up again. That's the truth. And I have to work real hard and believe real hard and have a lot of faith so that person never shows up. You know, I pray every time I get up to speak that Lord shows up and that I don't show up. Because you wouldn't like me if I showed up. Because I hurt people. I have bad thoughts about myself and other people because there's things going on with this alcoholism that alcoholics don't even know and I don't know. For instance, I didn't know that I'm petrified of you. I didn't know that. That's why they asked me, what song do you want? I said, I want the song, I Am No Longer a Slave to Fear. That's the song I want, because I was a slave to fear. Because I'm a guy who used to say, I don't know, maybe you guys had a milder form of this disease. I didn't even realize the disease. You ever say to somebody, I don't give a crap what they think about me? You ever say it out loud? I don't care what they think about me. Maybe you left the word crap out or something. You must be a nice alcoholic. I don't give a shit what they think about me. How about this? Forget about whether you ever said that to somebody. You ever think that? You ever think in your mind, you heard that somebody said something, you think that somebody said something, and you say, I don't give a shit. You just tell yourself over and over again, you don't give a crap what people think about you. People that really don't give a crap what other people think about them never say stuff like that. They say, pass the ketchup, but they don't say that stuff. The only people that say that stuff are people that live their entire vain, putrid lives worrying about what everybody else thinks about them. People that will do anything not to be rejected. People who will hoard themselves for the world. People that spend money they don't have to buy things they don't need to impress people they don't even like. You know, people, those are the people. I'm that kind of alcoholic. Although you see, because it says, unless and until an alcoholic accepts his alcoholism and all its consequences, whatever they are, his sobriety will be precarious and true happiness will find none at all. And one of the consequences of being an alcoholic, if you're an alcoholic, you hate yourself and you know you're unworthy. I'm not talking about you guys, because I could see you're a more evolved bunch of people. you're probably spiritual, not religious, right? You've just gotten to the point at 10 or 20 years where you're like a spiritual person. You know, you almost don't even need AA when you think about it because you're just so spiritual. And I used to say that, and I used to mean it, and I got to be honest with you, I'm not spiritual. I'm a material, evil person deep down inside. It can come at me anytime, and whatever you see in me that you think is decent or nice, it's because of the God that I've grown to understand and love. It's because of him. I'm reflecting him. It's not because of me, because I know who I am. I've done my steps. I've looked at the deal. I know exactly who I am. And it's good. And you know something? You know, the book says we will not regret the past. Well, there are things I've done in the past that I do regret. And I've made peace with that, the way I treated my first wife and her family. I regret that. As a matter of fact, I would hate to be the person who did the things I did to people and somehow think it's okay. And I don't. And it's not that I didn't make amends. I made amends to everybody. And I had a relationship with them, a good relationship, but I know how much I hurt them. Sometimes you don't realize how much you've hurt people and what you've done to destroy lives until you're 20 or 25 years sober, or 5 years sober. You look back. And you know something, I'm sort of glad I regret that, you know, because I've decided, I prayed about that deal, and I've decided that the fact that I regret what I did in the past and how much I hurt some people, it tells me this. It tells me, you know, Russell, that's who you really were, and that's who you could be if you stop walking with God. And it tells me that I could be that person again. And so not only don't I take my sobriety for granted, you understand? So I'm grateful to God because of the way he lets me work today, because I don't have to feel like some sort of guilty slime. I don't have to do what alcoholics love to do, and they do it all the time. They don't even know they're doing it. They don't even know it's part of the disease. I'm driving in my car. I'm 5 years sober. And all of a sudden I hear the voice. You guys probably don't hear the voice. You're lathering up in the shower and you hear the voice. You're a piece of crap. You ought to kill yourself. You'll never be okay. I'm 10 years sober, and all of a sudden you hear the voice. What's the use? You're a piece of crap. Might as well kill yourself. You'll never be okay. And I'm sponsoring 2,000 people, and I'm going to meetings, and I'm doing circuit talks, and I'm doing the whole bit, and I'm doing this, and I'm still in that voice. And I'm looking around to see, I'm in the car, I'm looking around to see who's telling me I'm a piece of crap and I ought to kill myself. And I'm the only one in the car. You know, and that voice is coming from inside of me. And that's the voice that I want to quiet. And the big book says we'll lose fear of people and of economic insecurity. And when is that going to happen? When is that going to, how is that going to, so that's the stuff I'm going to talk about. I had a guy, a sponsor once, call me up, Tommy. He's still sober now. He's got 40 years sobriety. And we were co-prosecutors in the state's attorney's office. We were both division chiefs, major crimes prosecutors. And Tommy was a great guy. He was a jock from the University of Florida and tried a bunch of murder cases together. And what happened was he called me up one day, and he was living in the floor of a probation officer's apartment. And he was supposed to be in court. He couldn't make it there, so because he had been using cocaine and booze for months, and I was already 3 years sober. And he called me up, and I called the chief judge. I got him out of that deal, and I ran over to get him. I took him to his first AA meeting, and he took off like a superstar. He loved AA. His hair was down to here. He got it cut short. He looked like the old Tommy. He was doing great. He loved AA. He was going to meetings. He got 3 months sober. And then one day I was at a meeting. I got a phone call, and I remember being on the phone with him, and he said, and he was whispering, and he said, Russell, I think I have to leave AA. I said, Tommy, is this Tommy? He says, yeah. He says, I think I have to leave AA. I said, Tommy, what are you talking about? He says, no, I think I have to leave AA. I don't think I'm an alcoholic. I said, what do you mean? You were on the probation officer's floor. You were snorting cocaine. You were drunk as a skunk. Your life was over. It was unmanageable. You went into AA. Everything changed. You love AA. You've been going to AA meetings for 3 months straight, 2 a day. You're telling him you're an alcoholic? What do you mean you're not an alcoholic? He says, yeah, I know. I says, I know. He says, but I really don't think I'm an alcoholic. He said, I don't understand how you think that. He says, Russell, listen. And then he whispered, he says, I think I'm just crazy. You can't make this stuff up. This is how you get more. This is the story. It became a story for me. I think I'm crazy. I said, Tommy. He said, what? He says, Tommy. He said, what? I said, Tommy, listen. He said, what? I says, you can be both. He said, really? I said, absolutely. This was a star prosecutor, prosecuted, some big murder cases. It was like a bolt of lightning. You know what I mean? He said, thank God, I thought I had to leave. So for you guys who are waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you're 5 or 10 years sober, for you guys that are riddled with fear, for you guys that are in a panic mode, for you guys don't want to drink but committing suicide is a possible option because you think about it all the time and you wonder what's going on. I just wanted to let you know you can be both. And you're suffering from something called the disease of alcoholism, which centers in your mind, not your body. And you've been suffering from that ever since you were a baby. And I drank alcohol because no woman, no car, no amount of money, no suit of clothes, no better job ever worked quite as well and quite as fast as just a few drinks. And that's why I drank it. And if it worked for me, the way it worked for me when I was 18 years old, I'd still be drinking it. But the deal is with me, it doesn't work for me anymore. And the real sad deal is it stopped working for me about 15 years before I realized it stopped working for me. And I hurt a lot of people. And I'd like to be able to blame alcohol for all the people I hurt. But most people I hurt, I was stone cold sober when I hurt them. And I've hurt many of the people, many of the same ways after I stopped drinking. Because I have a disease that centers in my mind. And you want to know something? The women, the cars, the money, the whole bit. The vanity of the things of this world, the worldly clamors that Bill Wilson was talking about, they work too. Even after the booze goes, I can use them. I can use the woman, the romance, the sex, the money, the cars and everything, and that works too. And it comes with the same detriment, the same problems, and it kept me in the same place. And that's the deal. And there's only one way out for me, and I don't like the way out. There's a great line on page 42 of the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. He says, there are so many lines that are not talked about in meetings, and one of the lines is, man, I wish I had it here, and I should have. I'm not sure. And what it says, men approached me, and they suggested a way of life. And what they suggested to me was absolutely drastic. Drastic. He says, but once I accepted that I had to do these drastic things, I had the profound feeling that I was going to be okay. And in fact, I was. And so I think I'm going to probably talk a little bit about the 6th step, which is an old-timer step, which is a step that separates out the men from the boys. It's the step that rockets you into the 4th dimension of existence, because you could be in the not drinking club for 20 years and feel sorry for yourself and be ticked off and carry resentments, or you can be in the rocket in the 4th dimension club. You know how there's a thing called the rocket in the 4th dimension. The only requirement to stay sober is a desire to stop drinking. It doesn't even have to be an honest desire. They threw that out a long time ago. It was too high a bar for alcoholics. Way too high, but there's a different requirement for the fellowship of the Spirit. There's something called the fellowship of the Spirit. And that's not just the desire to stay sober, because you just stay sober, you become like Tommy. Sober but crazy, sober but scared, sober but overspending, sober but looking at all the things of this world instead. But you could be rocketed in the 4th dimension of existence and no heaven and no peace. But the requirement is you got to make God the central fact of your life, and you got to be convinced that He lives in your heart and mind in a way which is indeed miraculous. And it's a drastic move that you have to do in order to get to that place. Over a long period of time, repeated humiliations, final crushing of your self-sufficiency, which happens at 10 years, at 20 years, at 30 years. I'm just telling you my experience. I'm telling you what I've seen and what I know. Whether you accept my testimony or not is up to you. Because that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to try to honestly give you my testimony, my story. You don't have to believe it. You can live it. You can see what happens. There's a lot of people, because, one of the chief characteristics of alcoholics is defiance. What defiance? Some guy, I did a talk in a prison the other day, and some guy says, well, what's this, defiance? What is this? One of the things I said to him, I said, the chief characteristics, I read this in the book. You ever read the chief characteristic? Selfishness and self-centeredness. That's the basis of our problem. That's the real problem. Driven. We're not even in charge. It's automatic pilot. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking. We step on the toes of others. And they retaliate seemingly without provocation, but we've learned that we made decisions based upon self, that puts us, selfishness, that puts us in a position to be hurt. So an alcoholic is really self-will and right, though he usually doesn't think so. And we're delusional. You know what that means? That means we can't separate the true from the false. That means we think things that are untrue, but we're sure of them. You know? And you know when that happens after you get sober. It happens before you get sober, and it happens after you get sober. You're delusional. I know because I work with a lot of physically sober alcoholics, and they're crazy. And they don't know they're crazy. They want to argue. Some guy asked me, what is defiance? I said, I'll tell you what defiance is. I asked my sponsor what that meant. Everybody needs a sponsor to translate the big book, which is, even though one of the great things about the big book is it sort of explains to alcoholics who they are and what they are in a, quote, non-confrontational way, which is the one thing an alcoholic doesn't need. Needs to be confronted. Bill Wilson said to Henrietta Seiberling, he says we shouldn't talk so much about God because he was worried about what other people thought about him. And I get that. He was an alcoholic just like me. Henrietta Seiberling says, Bill, if you don't talk about God, that's the only reason you're sober. He says, don't worry about pleasing alcoholics. They've been pleasing themselves all their lives. Why don't you just worry about, instead of worrying about what alcoholics think about you, why don't you worry about what God thinks about you? Because if you start worrying about what God thinks about you, you can be honest with people, and even in groups this large, because the truth of the matter is you're not filtering it by saying, well, what will they like me to say? What should I say so they like me? You can just tell them the truth. And if you tell them the truth, you never walk away saying, did I hurt somebody's feelings? Did I did the wrong thing? Because the truth is you're trying to please God, and what God wants you to do is authentically tell your story. Because that's your new job to be. Isn't that our new job? Be of maximum service to Him and other people? So yes, you treat everybody like they have a broken heart, because they probably do. But the bottom line is never rob an alcoholic of his last drink or his desperation, and never fail to tell the alcoholic the truth, even if it pisses them off. Because the one thing you know about alcoholics, if you piss them off, at least that means they heard you. Because if I was told a long time ago, if you throw a rock into a group of dogs, the one that yelps the loudest is the one that gets hit. And that's the one that will never forget you. For 2 months, they'll be thinking, that son of a bitch, why did they let him talk? What the hell does he know? And he'll either drink or he'll have a resentment, and he'll go to his sponsor and he'll pray about it, and he'll do an inventory, and he'll say, holy shit, that guy was right. You know, and then he'll come up to you 7 years later and say, I heard you talk and I used to hate you, but now I love you. And you'll have saved his life, because instead of thinking of yourself and trying to ingratiate yourself like you always do and be popular, you decide that even if people walk out the door and hate your guts, you don't care about that, because at least you could tell the Lord you told them the truth and you didn't lie to him. So one day, I had to get a few bucks. I go down and I spend it all, because that's what I do. I buy my brand new Camaro because I know now I'm going to be okay. It doesn't matter what you do, whether you buy a new dress, you know, whether you get a reconstructive surgery, whatever the hell you do to make yourself okay, because you know inside you're a piece of crap, you know. So if you got to be okay immediately, right? You got to do it immediately. It's going to change your life, because your life is crappy, you know. Well, you don't say your life is crappy. You just say, I got to do this because then things will be different, you know. I'll get the guy, I'll get the gal, I'll get the job, I'll get whatever it is. So I went down and bought the car. And they say, okay, come back tomorrow and we'll prep it. He says, no, I want to take it right now. He says, no, we got to prep it. It's the law. So it's 9 o'clock that morning. I'm down there. I'm getting the brand new Camaro. You know, I get in that car. It's got 100 miles. It's got a brand new smell. It's 1970, 1971. It's Saturday morning at 9 o'clock on Miami Beach. You know, I get in that car. You know, I'm about 200 pounds lighter than I am right now. I'm a young kid, like 19 years old. I got a T-shirt on. I got the Marlboro cigarettes rolled up. I got my sunglasses on. I got a cigarette hanging out of my mouth. I got the windows down. I'm driving down Biscayne Boulevard on Miami Beach. I thought the whole world was looking at me. I thought every woman in China was lusting over me and looking at me in that car. You know what I mean? Well, listen, if you're an alcoholic, you have to have a really good imagination. You know what I mean? Believe me, you know, because you don't want to hang around people. You want to hang around those imaginary gals, you know, and because real gals say things like no, you know, and they talk, you know. Yeah, you're laughing. You don't know what it's like. They say, no, I don't want to dance with you, you know, and stuff like that. And unless you have a few drinks, and then you can say, hey, you're lost, sweetie, you know. You can live in your make-believe world. But in any event, and so I'm driving down Miami Beach, and I drive down 3 blocks, and I stop at a light, and some dude drives next to me in a brand new red Cadillac convertible. Some old fart that looks like me, I suppose. And he's got the Playboy bunny sitting next to him, because that was my first Bible, Playboy magazine. And he's there with, and I'm looking at him. I'm looking up at him because I'm the Camaro guy. I'm looking up at him, and he's looking down at me. And I'm looking up at him. He's looking down at me. And I'm looking up at him, and the blonde sitting next to him. He's looking down at me. I'm in my brand new Camaro, and I say, why can't I have a car like that? The payments lasted 36 months, The car lasted 3 blocks. That's how it is when you go and you chase that stuff, and then you get it, and it has a half-life. It's like, sort of like being married. One day I was in, yeah, it's like marriage. It's like marriage. I know it is. It's like marriage, you see, because this is real stuff. This is my life, It may have been funny to you, but I'll tell you, this is my life. So I'm sitting in a class in college. I was going for my PhD in algebraic topology, which don't even ask me what it is, because I couldn't explain it now. I mean, I came today, they had like 2 neurons working, and they were waving goodbye to each other, but I saw this gal walk in, and I looked at this gal, because that was my deal. I looked at this gal, I said, man, if I could have that gal, I'd be okay. And I started I wanted what she had. I was willing to go to any length to get it. And so I started the process of trying to ingratiate myself and insinuate myself into her life. Being the charming guy I was, and I found out her father was a doctor, and her mother was a lawyer, and her grandfather was a lawyer. She came from a whole thing of professionals, and all of a sudden I decided, I said, I think what I ought to be is I ought to be a lawyer. I ought to be a lawyer. It made a lot of sense, professors don't make a lot of money, lawyers make a lot of money, women look up to them and everything like that, and I changed my whole career. I decided I went to law school. Somebody asked me, why did you become a lawyer? I said, well, I like Perry Mason. I became a lawyer to get in a gal's pants. That's why I became a lawyer. That's why I'm a lawyer today. It's too late now. Yeah, you're laughing. You guys have never done anything like that. You're not those type of alcoholics. I'm the kind of alcoholic that I have no integrity to anything, to marriage, to anything. I tell myself I'm an honest guy, but I'm not an honest guy. I tell myself I'm smart, but somehow my smart is mixed with my cravings and my feelings, and it always comes out sour. And so I marry this gal, and we have a baby, and we have a beautiful house on Miami Beach on the Lagorce Country Club golf course, 11th Fairway. I get a job with the state's attorney's office, become a division chief major crimes prosecutor there, I never cheated on my wife. I would just go to the bar. Alcoholics talk about balance. I would go to the bar at 4:30 in the afternoon. You got to get there like a half an hour before the rush job. I'd start feeling good right as I was pulling into the bar, and I'd sit there and I'd drink with the homicide cops and everything like that. And if I was on homicide duty or something, I'd drink with the cops, and I'd sit there at 4:30. From 4:30 in the morning till 4:30, from 4:30 in the afternoon till 4:30 in the morning with a wife and a baby at home. I never cheated on my wife. I'm very proud of myself for that. I'm proud of myself. I would sit there and I would look at the blondes and the brunettes and the redheads, and I would say, if I only wasn't married, I could have one of those. So I never cheated on my wife. I just sat there for 12 hours and drank, because I can drink for 12 hours easy. I come a day, they say you go to a meeting a day or something like that. Whoa, a meeting a day. It's kind of drastic, you know what I mean? It's drastic, But I could sit for 12 hours and drink and look at the blondes, brunettes, and redhead, and then I roll into my house. And one day, after 5 years of marriage, my lovely wife said to me, I was dressed in a blue suit, white shirt, red tie, going into the office, and she said to me, I just want you to know, it was like delivering the mail. He says, you've come home drunk one more time, I'm leaving you. She wasn't trying to start a fight. She just said, it was like, apparently she had some self-esteem or something. I don't know where she got that. She wasn't going to stick around with that crap. And they said, that thing about unless until an alcoholic accepts his alcoholism and all its consequences, it's probably be precarious and do happiness, don't find that at all. So I get in my car and I drive 3 blocks. I'm as sober as I am right now. And I stop at a light and I say this, what the hell did she mean by that? 12 words. If you come home one more time, I am leaving you. What the hell? I was like baffled. That's the consequence of being alcoholics. Whenever you see, hear, read, or are told anything you don't like, it baffles you. You get confused, you know? Like the judge tells you, I see you one more time, I'm putting you under the jail. What the hell was that all about, you know? And so I go to the bar that day. Everything that was important to me or should have been important to me was right up there on the line. And I go to the bar one day, and that day I go to the bar. I get there at 4:30. I'm only going to have one drink. I didn't forget what she said. I sat at the bar. I ordered my first drink, the double scotch. You know, because that's how I drank. I always started with two, you know, and I would whack that down. And Doug Hartman comes up to me, one of my drinking buddies, great guy, and he puts his arm around me. He says, "How you doing, buddy?" He says, I gotta leave. My wife told me if I come home drunk one more time, she's leaving me. And he looks at me, Russell, you are the greatest guy in the world. Your wife adores you. She will never divorce you. She loves you. We all love you. You're the greatest guy in the world. And I'm thinking, shit, that's what I was thinking. That's why I love hanging around with alcoholics. You know what I mean? They're so bright. They're the only ones that really understand me. And so the next thing I know, it's 4:30 in the morning, and the next morning I'm kicked out of the house, and that's the end of my marriage. The good news is, I went over to Doug's house, and I said, I'm here to live with you. He says, what? Get her on the phone. Let me talk to her. But it was too late. That was the end of my marriage. But she was a woman of integrity, and we had a son, so she said, let's go to a Bible study. I mean, not a Bible study, although I ultimately did that. But she said, let's go to a marriage counselor. And I felt I had to go because I didn't want to go, because I was finally out of it. And I could say it's because I was a man, I had no courage. You know, they say all men, we never apologize for God. This is big book stuff, by the way. It says we never apologize for God. All men of faith have courage. You know, this is a big book thing. It says all men of faith have courage. They trust their God. Instead, they let him demonstrate through their testimony what he would have them be at once they begin to outgrow fear. That's a big book, by the way. That's conference approved stuff. You know what that means? That means if you don't have faith, you don't have courage. That means you're a coward. It means you're a coward. You're scared to talk about God at meetings because you're worried what other people think about you. You stay until you even mention God because you want people to like you. It means you're a coward. I say shit like that. Don't pay any attention to it. But if it does disturb you, remember, whenever you're disturbed, no matter what the cause, there's something wrong with you. By the way, that's big book stuff. I just want to let you know that. It's just not my opinion. That's if you're one of these guys that want to do this thoroughly. Because rarely have they seen a person fail hasn't thoroughly followed it. If you want to do it thoroughly, you might want to consider that. There's a lot of things I can tell you about what it means to do it thoroughly and what it means to do six-step thoroughly as opposed to being in the not drinking club. So I go to the marriage counselor. He asks my wife, what's the 3 things you want to change about Russell? She says something. I'm not even paying attention because I have a date with a redhead. I can't believe I'm back here again. They're like Godfather. They're dragging me back in. He says, what do you want to change about your wife? And I say, without even missing a beat, sober as I am right now, I say, I just want to date other women. Calm down. This is about the time that women start looking at me differently. They say, this guy really is an asshole. You know what I mean? And that's because I am. I was a bum. That's how people act when they're bums. I was a bum in a 3-piece suit. And I thought nothing about ripping your intestines out and hurting you and doing anything to get where I wanted to go. And that's who I was. And that's what I regret. And that's who I could be tomorrow. If I start focusing on the stuff of this world instead of focusing on God. And so finally, ultimately, 3 or 4 months later, I found myself on December 25th, Christmas Day at 2:00 in the morning. I'd been kicked out of a Noche Buena, which is a Cuban thing that, they have fun with and everything. Some gal, man, as long as I had a gal, as long as I could find some sick woman to love me or care about me, I thought, man, I'm okay now. I just needed that deal. Money or a gal or a job, you know? And I was kicked out of her house because I was drunk. I got drunk before. I got drunk just to do the party. And here I'm alone on Christmas, and alcoholism is a lonely disease, thinking my life was over. And I turn on the TV and there's a preacher on Christmas Eve, 2:00 in the morning. He's talking about the Lord. And he said, if your life is over, and I was looking at myself in the mirror, I said, who are you kidding me? He says, you'll let Jesus into your life, you'll be okay, or whatever the heck he said. And like in a flash, I got down on my knees and I said the sinner's prayer, invited him into my life. And you don't have to do any of this stuff. This is just my story. This is my story. You understand? So I'm allowed to tell my story. Because what the book says, by the way, if you read the book, says each alcoholic in his own way and using his own language and from his own point of view talks about how he developed a relationship with God. That's in the big book. And since what I do is I follow the big book, even though it's drastic sometimes, and I started talking about him, and what happened when I started talking about him and what's actually going on with me, instead of being scared of y'all, I stopped being scared of you. And when I stopped being scared of you, I stopped worrying what other people thought about me, and then I stopped hating other people. You understand how that works? And then I started being able to be me instead of what you think I should be. And when I started being me, everything worked out perfectly because nobody does me better than me, but I never did me. You know what I mean? I was doing what I thought you wanted. So then I was able to talk freely and maybe even help other people and be honest, truly honest with people. But I guess it's all about whether you want to be a slave to fear or no longer be a slave to fear. I guess that's what it's all about. I don't know. I guess it's about being rocked in the fourth dimension. I guess it's about half measures not availing you nothing. Getting rid of old ideas, the result was nil. I guess it's about God is either everything or he's nothing. I guess if God is everything, you're going to be talking about him. You're going to be like Bill Wilson said in Alcoholics Anonymous number 3. The Lord has been so wonderful to me, curing me of this terrible disease. Got to keep talking about it, telling other people. You're going to be like Dr. Bob made when they said, what's first things first? Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all things will be added unto you. He said that, by the way, in Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. Nobody reads that. I guess you're going to be doing what they did in Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. The books they found absolutely essential were 1 Corinthians 13, Sermon on the Mount, the book of James. They studied those books. They said they were absolutely essential. I guess the big book, we started this thing in 1935. The big book was written in 1939. I got some news for you. They said, really ever seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our past? They weren't reading the big book. They're reading something else, but that has to do with thoroughly stuff, and you don't want to get into that because that's like 6-step crap. You know what I mean? You just want to settle for what you think is okay. And what you think is okay, as long as you're not drinking, you think that's okay. And what you think is okay is not drastic. It's not even close to drastic. And so I get a sponsor. I got 8 minutes. I'll do something in 8 minutes. So I get a sponsor. I come down. So I get down on my knees and, give myself the Lord, which is not a big deal. There's no atheists in what do they say? What is that? Foxholes. Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm going to be 75. So there's no, and foxholes. But I mean, for a Jewish kid from New York, it's pretty drastic, don't you think? And then I continue to drink, but that doesn't mean something didn't happen. And on January 25th, 1981, I had my last drink. So I come into Alcoholics Anonymous, I get a sponsor, I humble myself. I do the surrender thing by picking up a chip, like people picked up a chip. That's a humbling experience when you got a defiant, badass, piece of crap, know-it-all lawyer, who's used to putting people in jail because he likes it, to pick up in front of 100 people, a white chip, walk in front of them. You know what I mean? It's a humbling experience. And that's what this thing is all about, a new perspective, constant new perspectives. You understand? Constantly hitting bottom, always hitting bottom. What does it say? Ego deflation and death. Ego deflation and death. Constantly puncturing the ego. 10, 20, 30 years, constantly puncturing the ego. Because alcoholics are defiant people. What's a defiant person? The convict says, what does it mean to be defiant? I said, I tell you to go right. You say, screw you, I'm going left. That's defiant. You defy people. Who the hell do you think you're talking about? Because when you're talking to somebody who feels like a piece of crap, the one thing you don't want to do is make them even think that you think they're a piece of crap. But if they're alcoholics and you talk to them, even if you love them, they think you're talking down to them. When all you're trying to do is help them because they feel so low. And so I come to AA, and then I humbled myself again because I got myself a sponsor. Because I guess the reason was because the one great thing I had going for me, it says, we insist on people hitting bottom because nobody's going to do this drastic stuff unless they hit bottom, unless they think their life depends upon it. And I wanted so much not to drink. I got the sponsor, and his name was Bob. I was supposed to have, listen, my sponsor was supposed to be Albert Einstein or Jesus Christ, but they weren't available. So they foisted this guy. He didn't even graduate the 6th grade, I think. He was a used car salesman from Chicago, but he had about 15 years. His name was Bob Sullivan. So I went to say it to Bob, and he said, this is what I want you to do. He said, I want you to do 3 things. I want you to join a group. He said, don't drink, don't call me after, call me before you're going to drink. And he says, I want you to read the 24-hour book every day. 24-hour book is a great book. It's what they all used for like 40 years. It was a combination of the big book and the Bible. Every day, on your knees, ask God's help to stay sober. I don't remember him asking me whether I believed in God. He just told me that. Every time my sponsors suggested something to me, I always took it as an order. I did what Clarence the Brewmaster did, in the book Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers, which I know you all read and studied. When Bob came to talk to him, and he said, and the first thing he said is, do you believe in God? Because nobody had told Bob that if you ask that question, you're killing newcomers. Nobody told Bob Smith that if you mention God, you're killing newcomers. He said to Clarence, he said, do you believe in God, young fellow? He says, what does that have to do with it? And Dr. Bob said, everything. He said, well, I guess so. Guess nothing. You either do or you don't. Do you believe in God? Well, I do. He says, good. Get down on your knees by the hospital bed. We're going to say the prayer. And he prayed God into his life. And then that's when Clarence said that famous line in conference-approved material, Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. He said, I did what I was ordered to do. There were no suggestions. There were no suggestions. They asked Dr. Bob, what does first things first mean? I don't know what you think it means, but I'll tell you what Dr. Bob said. If you're interested, he said, seek ye first the kingdom of God, his righteousness, all these things will be added unto you. Oh, that's the way they did it back in the old days, not like it is right now. We let people wander around and flop around and they figure this thing out, and most of them don't, and they just drink. That's the way it happens. So Bob came to my office one day. I'll tell you, I was sponsored. I had a nickname. They called me Stupid. They said, your best thinking got you in here. So he came to my office. On my office, I have this wall. It's got 20 plaques and diplomas, proving that I've been educated far beyond my capacity to understand anything. And I said, Bob, these are my degrees. And he says, Russell, rectal thermometers have degrees. You know what they do with those? Gives you an idea how I was sponsored, you know what I mean? One day I went up to him. I was broke. I had a big Cadillac. I had a wife. I had a house. I was broke. I hadn't made the mortgage payments in a couple of months. I was worried. I couldn't stand it. I was going nuts, I could have shared it with I'm not going to tell my group. Not that I give a shit what they think about me, you know what I mean? But I'm not going to tell them that the big shot lawyer doesn't have any money. And so I told my sponsor, maybe give me a couple of bucks. And I went up and I told my sponsor, and he said, well, I can solve that. He says, you can solve it? He says, yeah. He says, I think it's about time you start making coffee for the group. I said, whoa, I don't think I explained myself properly. A is great, but we're talking money right up there with oxygen. And he watched me over the coffee pot, and I made coffee. And the next day I didn't want to go to the group. I didn't want to go because I didn't have any money, and I was very depressed, but I had to go because I had to make the stupid coffee, and I was worried about what people would think about me. And he does the spiritual jiu-jitsu, that same thing, worried about people thinking about me, had me worried about this group would think about me. So I made the coffee, and I showed up. I did coffee for the group for 18 months. After 3 months, the money came in. Some guy came up to me, he says, I'll make the coffee. I said, I'm the coffee maker. Who the hell appointed you? You son of a bitch, who do you think you are? One last story. I only have 2 minutes, and I'll tell you one last story, because it's too bad I got 10,000 of them, but we don't have all year. So I go up to I may go over a minute or two. Make believe you're in the bar, so you don't want to leave. So I got married to my second wife. My sponsor said, don't make any moves during your first year. So I got married after 3 months. Didn't think it was a big deal. I may have been wrong, but now I got 4 kids and 8 grandkids, and it's too late for me now. So I go to my sponsor. I had a fight with my wife. I don't know how many people are married here, but every once in a while you have a disagreement. And I have some great stories, husband-wife stories. So I had a disagreement with my wife, and I decided, and it was horrible, and I was going to get a divorce. I was 10 years, I was going to get a divorce. I went with my sponsor, Joe Snyder at the time, and I said, I'm out of here. I didn't sign up for this shit. I didn't sign up for this crap. This is bull. I mean, and I gave him a blow-by-blow description of everything she said. And let me tell you something. I was right. I was alky right. If you disagree with me, you have to die because you're so stupid. You know what I mean? And I was out, and I was sponsoring. I was doing all the steps, and I was speaking around. It was all over the place. But there was no way. And he says to me, he looks at me, and he says, "So why are you upset?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Why are you upset?" He says, I just spent 20 minutes telling you everything she did, everything she said. He says, "I understand, but why are you upset?" I says, "What do you mean why are you upset?" He says, "That's not why you're upset." "What do you mean that's not why?" He says, "That's not why you're upset." "You mean she said all that stuff?" He says, "Russ, that's not why you're upset." He says, "That's not why you're upset." I said, well, he said, "That's not why you're upset." And then he shut up. And I'm sitting there, and of course, I'm very interested in me, and he's acting like he knows something I don't know, and he's got like 25 years. And so I said, "Well, do you know why I'm upset?" He said, "Oh, absolutely." He said, "You know why I'm upset?" "Oh, it's so easy." I said, "Well, are you going to tell me why I'm upset?" He says, "I don't know. Do you really want to know?" He says, "Well, of course I want to know. Why am I upset?" And then he said, this is the exact words. I'm not making this up. I got 10 years, and this is what he says. "Listen, stupid." My nickname. He said, "Listen, stupid, you're upset because you're upsettable." And I say, "What is this, like Zen AA? What?" And you know, I've been married almost 44 years now. And well, I'm scared to get a divorce, but I mean, and I've been married 44 years now. And sometimes my wife and I don't see eye to eye. And I have a whole other story that I could tell you, but they'd shoot me. So I'm not going to tell you about something that happened recently. But she does some stuff. I'm not even talking about putting the toilet roll on wrong. You know what I mean? The wrong way, or putting things in the wrong place. I'm talking about she does some really stuff, you know? But I don't really get into too many fights with her. You know why? Because it doesn't upset me. And I've learned that the world hasn't changed a whole bit, but I just don't get upset about it. And you know, when you don't get upset about things, you don't crave things, you don't lust after things, and you don't drink. And you know what my big book says? God will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. And I crave godly fellowship. And so I don't hang around with toxic people, you know, and I hang around with people that feel the way I do and search for the central fact of their life, and it ain't money. Because I learned a long time ago, I'm not my shoes, I'm not my coat, I'm not my car, I'm not any of that stuff. None of that stuff means anything. I have no bucket list. I don't even understand the thought process that goes in the mind that before I die, I want to go to the Grand Canyon. I don't even get that. You know why I'm here? Because you know what's on my bucket list? See whether I can help one more person. Because that's the only thing I focus on. Because that's what God wants me to focus on. And if I focus on what God wants me to do, I find I'm happy. Thank you very much.